experts coming to speak to us today. So we'll be covering three key elements of health and well-being, which has become, far more important. And I'm delighted to say, the positive out of it is that it's now on the agenda. I've been a big advocate for years now of the benefits of a healthy workforce and healthy business people and benefits. And I won't steal their thunder, but I'm sure all three of them will be talking to you about those. So what we're going to do, we've got Michael Byrne, who'll be speaking about mental health. Janice Condron, who runs a yoga and mindfulness and other the Pilates and meditation sessions, and Mark Tiffney, who runs the gym, Dynamic Core Studios. Make sure I get that right, just in Clydebank. So there's a fitness element to it, and I think Jan can join the two with a sort of physical and mindful element. So in terms of the order, I think we'll start with Mark first of all, and then work our way through. So if I can unmute you, Mark, then we can kick in. Just bear with us. Mark's going to share his screen, so he's just getting used to the Zoom at the moment. So I'll pass over to you, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Damon. Thanks very much for inviting me to do this, and it's a pleasure to be joining Janice and Michael, which is really going to tie into an awful lot of what I'm going to say. I am a gym owner, personal trainer for the last 15 years, fitness author and coach. And although my history is I'm a qualified architect, which is kind of a strange place to be coming from, but it does mean that I do understand the kind of balance of trying to work a professional career and trying to work your health and fitness together. It's not like I've just lived in a gym my entire life and have no understanding of it. The facility, obviously, that we have at the moment is closed, unfortunately. But what I really want to be able to touch on today is a number of aspects leading into the actual physical aspect and the nutritional aspect of health and fitness, but also not only just the benefits of those things, but also why we don't do them, or why we don't implement them the way that we should. And I think we all know that we should, but we don't necessarily follow that path. What I'm going to go over when I share the screen in a minute is balances, work-life balance, talking about that, but then what balances the work-life balance, the benefits of the lockdown, and how we can actually take this as an advantage and something that we can implement into our lives to make an improvement. How to switch perspectives and habits to integrate better fitness and nutrition habits, and just sort of looking at sort of overall benefits. Now, obviously, we've not got a lot of time here for me to go into anything in great detail, but I'm going to go into some headlines, which I'm hoping is going to spark a almost internal monologue to start having a conversation with yourself, to hopefully start making improvements as we go along. So I will try the screen share thing and see how it goes. Let's see if I go to that. I want to go to there. Yeah. And hopefully that'll work. So that's just me. So I can move on from there. So the first section is balance and getting it right. And everybody knows about the work-life balance thing. I think that comes up an awful lot. But the idea that you have to try and balance your work and your life, there is an underlying foundation to all of that. If you don't have good health and good fitness, I think is a situation more than anything is starting to highlight, you have nothing. So trying to get that work-life balance to be on par is maybe becoming a little bit easier because we're all at home now. I know I've seen my child an awful lot more in the last few weeks than I probably have done in the 5 years that he's been alive, and he's loving it. But that part of it is kind of like improved through this situation. But again, you can try and balance these things as much as you like, but if you don't have your health and your well-being, you kind of can't do either of them well. So yeah, so I think that's an important thing to always look at, is that the foundation underneath everything is your health. But I think when it comes to some of the aspects that Damon even touched on at the beginning there, which is the idea that your health is the foundation for everything, and the healthier you are and the better your health and fitness, the more productive you're going to be, the less sick you're going to be, the more energy you're going to have, the more you're going to be able to just give out to the world. But I think a lot of us know that, we hear that an awful lot, but yet we don't do it, we don't follow through on it. And why is that we don't follow through? And one of the things that always comes to mind as an idea for this is, I'm sure most of us have been on a plane, hopefully not recently, but most of us have been on a plane in our lives. And in the beginning, they always have this thing that most people stop listening to, where the flight attendants start showing you all the safety information. And one of the parts that always comes up from that is, if the oxygen masks drop from above your heads, please make sure to fit your own one before you help anyone else. And you know, we all understand why that is. If you can't breathe properly, you can't help anyone else that's nearby. But if you were sitting there with a young child, your own or someone else's, or someone else that you really cared for, those oxygen masks drop and they're struggling, can anyone honestly say in that situation that the first thing they're going to do is say, no, logically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this mask on first, and then I'm going to help? I think most people are going to still instinctively dive for their child and try and help their child. And I think that's mostly what we do in our lives, is we focus on the people around us, we help them, we'll focus on our businesses, and we try and make sure that works, because all these things seem important, and we become an afterthought as far as, you know, trying to look after your health and your well-being. As long as you're not chronically sick and you're not chronically hurting from pain, then it becomes something you'll do tomorrow or next week or the week after. And that's where I think Janice and Michael are probably going to talk about this an awful lot more, but I think that's one element that is so crucially important, is that you have to get this part up here right before any of the stuff that you do in a place like a gym is actually going to benefit for you. When it comes to the current situation, what I feel that this situation has brought to us is that it's given us a chance, hopefully, for us all to take a step back and really evaluate what is important. And one of the things that came up right in the very early days is from Michael Osterholm, who is one of the experts on infectious diseases, who is, you know, globally recognized as an expert on infectious diseases. Was asked directly in the early days of this virus, what can we do? Because there was all these weird things that came out at the time about having hot saunas or drinking really hot water and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's even still some coming out now from the President of the United States that, you know, the ridiculous things that were coming out. And when asked directly, well, what can we do? Because people are looking for something to do. His answer was, look after your immune system. And really, that's the only thing that you can do to benefit your longevity with this, or your ability to fight this until there's a vaccine available. But that's been true for years. When it comes to the flu, when it comes to the cold, any virus that's out there, if you want to protect yourself from it, you distance yourself from people who've got it, you wash your hands, and you try and eat healthily, sleep well, and look after your nutrition. And it's always been important. This is just highlighting it, I think, more than ever, to a point where I'm hoping that it's going to start resonating with people a little bit more than they were before. So the hierarchy of this is really important. I'm going to come on to that in a second. But the other thing that I think this is kind of highlighted is the idea of following your own path. So this is something I've went on about for years, is the idea that we are very different, a very unique sort of setup to all other gyms that I'm aware of. Most people tend to have a thing where they just follow the crowd. And the crowd, you know, everybody's joining this gym, so I'm going to go and join it. Everyone's doing this diet, so I'm going to jump on it. Everybody else is on a diet at the moment, so I'm going to go on a diet. And the idea is to just jump on the bandwagon without any real thought about why you're doing it, just the feeling that you've been saying it for years and therefore you should do something about it. Well, hopefully, at the moment, one thing that this situation is showing is a crowd like this. Well, you can't do that because there's no social distancing there, so you can't follow the crowd anymore. So I'm hoping it's going to give people a chance to step back and think about what is important to you, what do you need to do, what are the specifics for you. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't jumped on the bandwagon of creating, sort of like high intensity interval training sessions and MetaFit sessions and all that online, because everybody's doing it. YouTube's full of them. You don't really need more of them. So what am I contributing by doing that? What we've really been doing is going to each member that we have of this gym and individually talking to them to try and make sure that we're giving them something that's going to benefit them in the position that they're in just now. So follow your own path, I think, is kind of the main thing, the main starting point. From there, once you've decided kind of where you want to go, common reasons for failure when people do want to start making a difference in their lives, there tend to be four. There are working from lies, which I will come back to in a second. Frustrations versus expectations, I'll come back to that too. Lack of patience, and the one that I think people can actually prioritize a little bit more now are life and priorities. Obviously, in the normal life, when everything's not locked down, we've got a situation where not only have you got your work to do, you've got family commitments and all that, but then you'll have people saying, inviting you to their wedding or to birthdays or to just a night out for people you haven't seen for an awful long time. And it's hard to say no to those things because these people are important to you. At the moment, you don't have that. So now is one time that we've got a chance to really focus on ourselves a little bit more. And those sort of life and priority issues are kind of eking out a little bit. Yes, there are some that have been caused by this situation, but I'm hoping that that's something that people can look into a little bit more now. Going back to the first thing on there, common lies. I'm not going to go, we don't have a lot of time here, so I'm not going to go into these. Our website, dcsfit.com, there's a section called The Core. There are myths that you can look up, and it touches on most of these things individually in articles. Cardio equals fat loss, not necessarily. Weights make you bulky, no it doesn't. You can lose, 40 pounds of fat in a week. No, that's not going to happen. Carbs make you fat, and so on and so on. So they commonly come up, but because there's a belief system there that these are things that happen or things that you should expect, then people sort of go down that road, and then when it doesn't happen, get frustrated, and that's something that I am going to come on to next. So frustrations versus expectations. The situation that most people are in is they want to make an achievement. The achievement is at point B, you're at point A, and the problem is that people then set their goals from point A, they want to be at point B, and the frustration comes from the space in between the 2 points. So, in that section there. And the problem is that people try to act from point A the way that you always have done and try and get to point B without making those changes or without making a change internally. And again, that's what I'm hoping we're going to hear a lot more from Michael and Janice about shortly. Because if you don't have that part correct, none of this matters. It doesn't matter if you get the perfect workout. It doesn't matter if you put in a ton of effort. If you don't have internally the correct thought process, or you're not being the person at point B, you'll never become the person at point B. You have to act from that point rather than acting from the point A, because the old saying of do what you've always done, get what you've always gotten. So the frustration comes in that point, and then you get a lack of patience, and that's what normally gets people to give up. But this lockdown is giving us all a situation where that is maybe something that we can overcome. You can't, when people come in here, quite often, the idea of spending an hour working on your rotator cuff or working on movement on a shoulder niggle that you've had for a little while, or a hip problem or something like that, it feels like, well, I'm only here for an hour. I don't have much time to get to the gym through the week. So I don't want to waste my time on that small little thing. So I'm going to go and bench press. I'm going to go and squat. I'm going to go and do these big things that are going to move the needle a lot, rather than these tiny little steps that are actually going to build a foundation that you can then build on. You've been forced into a situation where you're now at home and you don't have access, potentially, unless you've got a garage full of equipment or something, to go and do big movements. And you can't do anything big. I think the problem that might come now is the idea that some people are still trying to emulate what they could do in a situation when you have all this equipment available to you at home, and then you'll get more frustrations and more lack of patience and things like that coming from it. I want to pose a question, which I'm going to go back to in about 2 minutes, which is, seems a bit off topic, but it'll make sense in a minute. Which part of a car, in a racing situation like Formula One, or if you had a performance Ferrari or something like that, which part of the car is most important? I'll come back to that in a second, but it's just something to think about for the next minute or two. So the one thing that I want really everybody to maybe focus on, and this is what I want to focus on with people's health, fitness, movement, nutrition, and everything, is small steps, and how important small steps are, particularly at the moment. There's an author called James Clear who's wrote a book called Atomic Habits, which I strongly suggest checking out. It's a brilliant book, and it sort of covers better than I ever have stuff that I've been spouting about for the last 15 years, which is the idea that these small incremental steps consistently over a long period of time are much more effective than jumping in, trying to throw the kitchen sink at what you're trying to do everything, doing it badly, but then failing, stopping, and starting again. And there's a graph that he sort of explains in the book, which I've kind of taken and adapted a little bit here, which is this thing here. Now, if you make 1% improvement every single day, you would expect by the end of the year to have made 3.65% improvement. But because of compound interest, effectively, you're building on the changes that you're making and the habits that you're making one little bit at a time. Then what you actually make over a course of a year, if you're consistent with that tiny little increment every single day, is an improvement of 37.78% from where you started, or 37 times improvement, or almost 38 times improvement. So that you get that curve that you sort of see in the top there of how improvement actually happens. This goes for the gym, this goes for anything in life, whether it be your business or just trying to improve at anything. What people expect to happen is that red line. And what you get is this, what I call the zone of disappointment, in that little kind of curve in there. People expect the red line to happen. You expect to be getting better and better and better. And because of what you see in the media and these expectations and these false promises that I mentioned earlier, what you get is a situation where people expect the red line to happen. When you get about halfway through the curve and the zone is at its biggest, you're in a position where you're furthest from the line that you're ever going to be on the curve. The people that make it to the point where the two lines join and continue tend to be the ones that have the biggest success. They do continue into the future and it becomes part of their life. The problem is most people get halfway there, feel that they've not made progress, and give up. And then they start again and the whole cycle repeats itself. So that's why the idea of making these little small improvements, I feel is really, really important. So how do you do that? And again, I've only got a few more minutes I'm going to talk here, but I just want to kind of go into the point that there is a hierarchy of importance. So load your dishwasher. What I mean by load your dishwasher is a dishwasher will work if you close the door, turn it on, and then try and put your dishes in. The dishwasher's still working. You've done all the things, but you've done them in the wrong order, and now you don't have clean dishes. So you have to put them in, you have to do it in an order. You have to put the dishes in the thing, then you have to put the cleaning powder in, then you close the door, you put the button on, and then you close the door, and then it washes the dishes. So you have to load your dishwasher first before you turn it on. And I think with that analogy, when people try to do fitness, what they try and do first is turn everything on, and then they try and cram in the bits that they should have done in the beginning. So when it comes to hierarchy of importance, sorry, I shouldn't have skipped on here yet. You've got hierarchy of importance. I want to come back to the car thing, which is what is the most important part of the car. Now, you might have said engine, you might have said the wheels, you might have said the chassis, you might have said the aerodynamics, and kind of everything is kind of wrong. Ultimately, the thing that is the most important is the weakest point. It doesn't matter what the weakest point is, that's the bit you have to fix. That's what all the engineers in Formula One spend the off season doing, is trying to make micro adjustments to the smallest little parts of the car, because usually everybody's got the same aerodynamics, everybody's got the best engine they possibly can, but they try and tweak and modify to try and make it better and better and better. So when it comes to your body, the thing that you need to change, or the thing that is kind of the weakest point, is always the bit that's going to hold you back, the weakest link in the chain. And what I find with people, that particularly business people, people that work at desks an awful lot, and this was true for me when I did architecture, when you're sitting over a computer all the time, your shoulders are rounded forward, your posture is terrible, your hip flexors get really tight, you get a sore back. And then you hit the gym, and instead of fixing all of those things, what you end up doing is saying, well, everybody else says I should squat. Everybody else says I should do interval training. Everybody else says I should do all these things. And you end up, you don't do them. You don't do the things you should do. You do the things that you think you should do. So trying to fix these small bits, again, on the car thing, if you've got a flat tire, doesn't matter how big your engine is. If there's no fuel in the car, doesn't matter how good the car is, it's not going to go anywhere. You have to put the right fuel in, you have to have an engine in it, you have to have all the wheels pumped up, everything has to work. And you can't just focus on one thing and one element and try and make that the one and only goal. But the idea is, at the end, the goal is to win the race. And so you want the best possible car to be able to do that, but you don't do it all at once. You do it in increments, small increments. So the hierarchy of importance that I was talking about earlier, again, I'm not going to go into this in huge detail, but you have to have the foundations, right? You have to have things like your nutrition, your sleep habits, your water intake. All these things have to be in place. Otherwise, no matter what you do, it's going to make no difference, or very little difference. Then beyond that, if you don't have good movement, good range of movement, you don't have a reasonable baseline of strength, then trying to burn fat and trying to build muscle is going to become much more difficult, because you're sort of fighting from a very weak foundation. Again, going back to the architecture thing, you can't build a huge skyscraper without strong foundations. You can maybe build a mud hut, but I don't think anybody wants to live in a mud hut. So the main thing is to try and get these things in your head, slow it down, get the basics right, do it one little bit at a time. This is something that I'm going to be putting out on the zone that Damien was talking about at the start, the little videos. I think there's one up already, but some little videos showing small little steps that everyone can take one little bit at a time. And the idea being that they are small things that you don't then say it's all or nothing. You actually look at the idea that yes, if my shoulders are tight, can I start doing something that takes maybe 2 minutes a day to try and start loosening that off, then build on it, then build on it, then build on it, until eventually you get to a point where you are moving better, your general health and well-being is better, and now you can use those foundations to make a big difference. But trying to implement these things to become a habit, that's where the difficult part comes, and that's the kind of last thing that I wanted to touch on here, which is the idea of the steps to forming a new habit. 4 steps to forming a new habit in general terms. You've got cue, craving, response, and reward. And in fitness terms, what that means is you've got the cue being pain. Usually the thing that the catalyst for most people to try and make a change is pain. And that's what I said at the beginning. Until you've got something that actually feels chronic, most people don't do anything about it. And I'm hoping now, when we've got this time to reflect, people are actually going to sit and forward think. It's no point waiting for a coronavirus to come around and then saying, I better fix my immune system. It would have been good to have it fixed beforehand, because there'll be another virus along. The flu is always here, and this might not go away. But if you can get that pain in your head, actually, what is the problem, and then make it obvious, then you're in a situation where that desire inside your head is going to start to build. So the idea of it being very aesthetic based is never really a very good starting point. I want to get a 6-pack, or I just want to get leaner. It's never a great starting point. If you've got something that, say you want to be able to play with your kids and grow old with them, then that's a very kind of big and powerful thing to have in your head. Make it as obvious as you possibly can in your head. Then build a desire, make it attractive. Once you make that thing attractive to yourself, you're more likely to do it. If it's just something you say you're going to do, you're probably going to give up after 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 hours. When it comes to nutrition, quite often, I'm not going to eat that bar of chocolate, but it's there, but it's there, but it's there. You're going to eat the bar of chocolate. Then take an action point and make it easy. And that's where it comes back to these small increments. When you try and load everything at once, it never sticks, or very rarely does it stick. Never is a very strong word. Very rarely does it stick. So make it easy. What can you do to move yourself forward, even if it is only 1%? And the removal of pain, the reward, make it satisfying, make it something that you can feel at the end of it. Okay, I did that. I've moved towards this attractive goal and I feel good about it. And now I can actually make a difference. So they're kind of the points that I wanted to cover. I'm going to come out of this share. And come back on here. There's a lot of notes. I think, the situation we're in just now, I'm hoping for all our sakes, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that we're getting here. And it's one of these things that we could get to the end of it and look back and think, God, I wish when we were in lockdown, I'd spent a little bit more time on this or that. I don't think we're going to get another one. I hope we're not going to get another one. So while we've got it, we might as well take the chance to do it and actually make these little changes to our lives, one little bit at a time. And what I'd sort of encourage is the idea of trying to just reflect on what is it that you need? What do you need for your body? Is anything starting to hurt? Is your posture out? Have a look at yourself. Just take a time to reflect, have a look at yourself and see what's wrong and fix it before it gets any worse. Once you've got that, then you can start going for the bigger things. The last thing I'm going to leave here is a couple of resources. One of them is on our website. If you do want to look at nutrition, we've got a nutrition guide that you can download on our website. It's a 30-day thing that you can follow. The 30 days is fairly arbitrary, but it's something to sort of like just look at as a way of, if you just want a plan, there is one there. You can download it off the website. I'm sure the links will get posted. And one other thing that I've not even discussed is the idea that now that we are in this position and while we're still in lockdown, anyone who is a member of the chamber, there's a phrase that I heard a few months ago that I absolutely love, which is, you can't read the label on the jar from inside the jar. And our lives are jars. And sometimes it takes someone else to stand outside with a mirror and reflect it back to you to be able to see what's on the label. Sometimes you just need someone else to be able to talk to be able to get these things right. So while we're in the situation, I'm going to offer some free coaching for anyone in the chamber who wants it over the next, obviously within reason, there's only so much time, but if anybody's interested, we'll put the contact details up. You can get in touch, get back in touch with me, and I will put up the chance to sit down with somebody for 40 minutes to reflect back the idea of what is it that you might want to be focusing on. And it also might help me inform some of the videos that I'm going to put up to people or put up on the portal for people as well, to try and make sure it is actually helping the people we're putting it out to. So I'll make that available going forward. As I said, most of this has been headlines, unfortunately, rather than any great detail. And it's quite hard for me to go up and start demonstrating, exercises, but I will put them in videos and put them out, and hopefully they'll be useful as well. But I'm hoping this is going to lead on to what Janice and Michael are about to say. Hopefully I've not stolen the thunder of any of that either. But I do think more important than anything is this more than this. This is a byproduct. This is a set of tools that you can use. Gyms are great for tools. They're full of them. There's thousands of pounds worth of gear that you maybe don't have access to just now. And now you maybe need to get a bit clever with what you've got at home to be able to try and makeshift some tools. But it's just like doing home DIY as opposed to getting a professional in. I think I'll leave it at that, and hopefully that's been helpful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Thanks. We'll come to questions at the end, as I said. But no, that was a really different take on fitness, and I think you really highlighted some of the shortcomings in other areas where it I think sometimes they try and give people what they think they want, if you know what I mean. So I think going through it in quite a almost like a analytical sort of way is really helpful, and starting to I certainly recognize some of those areas that you were mentioning on the curve, and I'll probably rant about it at the end, but I mean, I've come through the curve to the end, and the idea of habit forming and getting into the habit of something that gives you satisfaction is almost an addiction by the end of it. And you know, once you get past the middle bit, which is you always fall back into, if you know, the problem is your work takes over and suddenly you drop back and you fall back into that area, and it takes another, especially as you get older, takes another 2-4 weeks to get back up. So no, that was really interesting, and potentially if we get demand for this, then maybe we need to do sessions that are specific to, maybe talking a bit more about some of those areas that you talked about, because I appreciate in the time we've just given people the sort of bite-size things to think about, but kind of breaking them up into what you need is really valuable. So that's fantastic. So that leads us nicely on to Jan, I think, because there's a lot of things in there that I think Mark's touched on that you can expand on.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming in to see what rubbish we're going to talk about today. I own De-Stress in Clydebank. It's a yoga, relaxation and alternative therapy studio. I've managed to bring everything all under one roof, and all my loves. I'm a therapist and a yoga instructor. I've got 20 years experience of practicing yoga and 13 years of teaching yoga, and 25 years of being a alternative therapist and sports therapist. So I've got a few things in the bag now, and the reason most of us will be here, we wouldn't probably be doing this, we'd be at our work, is obviously because of COVID-19, and unfortunately it's a terrible infection that affects the lungs. So what I thought I would do is, for those of you that are maybe not aware, is yoga isn't just all about asanas, as in poses, but it's also about breathing techniques and the function of the lungs as well. So I thought I'd do a very quick test just to see how healthy all your lungs are. So I'm going to set my timer for a minute, and I'm going to get you to hold your breath. I'm just going to hold your breath for a minute while I chat for that minute, okay? So I'm going to just get everybody to take a big deep breath in just now, and then exhale. And now I want you just to start your deep breath in now, and I'm going to start timing you. And I'm just going to keep chatting while you're holding your breath. And what I was going to tell you about is there's actually around about 3 million people who are taking long-term sick leave, or they're absolutely unable to work due to chronic back pain. And it's actually the leading problem for UK's long-term sickness. And it's responsible for 15 million sick days a year. You were only halfway, guys. And then stress as well is a common known enemy of people in the workplace as well, both physical and psychological. And it can have a severe damage in the workplace too. And according to statistics, if you're into that kind of thing, 20% of workers actually suffer from stress and stress-related illnesses. And mental health issues actually can cost as much as 14% of the annual income from a business. How did you all go, guys? Did you manage your minute?
Put your thumbs up. Put your thumbs up on the. Sorry to interrupt, but put your thumbs up on the reaction if you managed to do that.
Did you manage to do it? Anybody? So I decided to do that little trick just to see how everybody's lungs were functioning. And one of the ways that yoga can help the body is to enhance the functioning of the lungs. And the healthier that our lungs are, the more likely we are, if we do unfortunately contract COVID-19, is we might get it milder, but we're more able to cope with it. So I thought I would just do that quick test. The other little part of the test was how many of you actually managed to take in what I was talking about while you were concentrating on your breath? You can you? You have to switch off. You can't do both. You can't think about the breath and listen to what somebody's saying. It just doesn't work. And for that whole minute, all you were thinking about was yourself. Just one little minute out of your day, and that's all you thought about was, I don't know how long I can do this. How long is a minute? And I did it just for a little bit of a giggle, but just to show you how focusing on the breath can make such a difference to the mindset. And that's where yoga comes into practice in the workplace, because you don't need to have, like when Mark was saying, like if you're going to be doing gym work and things like that, then you need to sort of think, right, I need to get a water bottle to use as a weight and all that kind of thing. You don't need any special equipment to do yoga in the house or in the workplace. You don't even actually need a mat. Everybody seems to think that yoga's all about if you can stand on one leg without falling over. But that's just one of the limbs to yoga. There's actually 8 different limbs to yoga, and I'm not going to tell you about them all. I'm going to tell you about the 2 that I personally think are most important. And the most important things for me is starting off with the breath. Because what the breath does is it quietens the mind. And that's what yoga's all about. That's what yoga means. Yoga means quieting the mind. So why do we want to do that in the workplace? Well, I think most of you are all quite aware that you can get stressful at your work. You can get anxious because of your work. You can get headaches at your work. It can make your work can make you feel tired. There's so much going on that you don't know how to plan your day. The tension that can build up. When you're at your work, you can get sore neck, you can get tight neck, you can get tight shoulders, your back can get sore, because most of us, especially just now, the type of work that they're doing is sedentary, so they're not even able to, because they're working from home, even climb up the stairs to see somebody in a different office, or go along the corridor to speak to somebody, or even get into the toilet. Your toilet isn't 2 feet away from you when you're working. You've actually got to get up and move and get there. And the same as, it's so simple, like because you're working from home, you're able just to go and put the kettle on at any time. Whereas when you're working, you take a break to go and have a cup of tea or something like that. So you take time away. So that's why I think it's quite a good thing to be able to do some yoga in the workplace. So I also thought there's a lot of people that have got excuses for why they're not interested in yoga, or they don't think yoga's for them. So I jotted down a few, and I actually asked my husband for a reason why, unfortunately, to great heartbreak for me, is just doesn't into this yoga business at all. That was his answer, just not into your yoga business at all. But when I explained it, I did the breath trick with him, and he managed 30 seconds. And that's when I said to him, well, maybe you should just even take on the breathing part of the yoga rather than the standing on one leg. So the excuses that I've been getting for people deciding that yoga's maybe not quite for them, I'm too stiff, I can't bend, I'm too inflexible. To me, for somebody that says that to me, and that's why they don't come to yoga, that's like saying that you're too dirty to take a bath, because you might make the bath dirty. Okay, so that's one of the, I diss that, because you're never going to improve your flexibility until you try, until you start doing the tiniest little thing, or go for a bath. The next thing, I can't do yoga because I need to lose weight, I'm too fat. Maybe once I've lost a few pounds, I'll maybe try yoga then, and I might be able to bend a wee bit better. Yoga will help you to burn calories. Even the breathing will help you to burn calories. And you know yourself, if you burn some calories, and those calories are less than what it was that you're putting in your gut, you're going to lose weight. So you don't need to start to lose weight before you do yoga. Yoga's for everybody. I'm too busy. I'm too busy at my work. I'm looking after my family. I'm trying to do homeschooling. I've still to go to the shops. So most people, unfortunately, just now are having to work from home. or they're not having to do so many hours at their work. And what about that commute time that you were using to get to your work and to get home from your work? You not got that just now? Why not make that commute time something that's going to be effective to your health and to your mental and physical well-being? You can use your commute time, what was it, half an hour out your day? I'm only asking for 15 to 20 minutes. It's not a long time. And I'm sure out of 24 hours, you can give that time to yourself, because it's all about you. And that's another thing, that people feel guilty about taking time for themselves. But if, like what Mark said, if you don't look after yourself, how are you going to be able to look after these other people? So 15 to 20 minutes a day is not a lot to ask for. I mean, it really isn't. So that was another thing that people were saying. Then, guys, this is a guy one. It's for old ladies. They wear leotards and tan tights, and it's not a guy thing. And why would I want to do it? So would you tell Ryan Giggs that he's a Jessie? Or David Beckham, who loves his yoga, he's a Jessie? Or Sting, who believes that that's why he still looks relatively young. And if you do look at pictures of Sting, he's hardly changed at all, but he has a daily yoga practice. And I'm not saying it's because he does 20 sun salutations a day, it's because he works on his breath, which oxygenizes the body, which helps the body to work better, and obviously helps your aging process. So you're not going to say that to them. It's boring. Yoga's boring. Yes, you may have tried to do a yoga class, but do you know how many different types of yoga that there are? There's dynamic yoga, which would be like vinyasa, which you really have to get the heart and lungs going, and it's one pose after another, and you just basically do a whole sequence of poses. So that's for the people that want to be using their heart and their lungs and to have a bit of fitness going on. Then there's general hatha yoga. That's where all yoga comes from, which, yes, is a wee bit more slow. It's a bit more deliberate. And it's maybe not for everybody, because they can't wait till the instructor finally says, oh, let's do a different pose. There's also yin yoga, or restorative yoga, and that's an amazing type of yoga for people that are just so stressed that the thought of actually maybe being sweaty or holding things, or they're sore, so you get to use props and you hold things for a minute, and that's when you actually start to connect with the breath and make the actual breathing work for you. And that's just a couple that I've got to say to you. So I always think, you might not like the first type of yoga you've tried, but there's nothing stopping you from trying another and another. Hot yoga, because that's really hot and that helps you to be more flexible. So if you're concerned about your flexibility, hot yoga is very good because it helps to make the joints more mobile, which might make things more accessible to you. So there's all different types of yoga that you don't know whether it's boring or not. Some of you just think it's boring, but you've not actually tried it. So we can come away from the boring thing. And then there's the whole thing, you just can't be bothered. It's just not your thing. That's okay. But we're all off our work just now, or we're not doing the same hours that we're used to. So why not just be bothered just for once and just see how it is? And you might be pleasantly surprised, you never know. Doesn't interest you? But there's all these different things, and there's things that it can do for your health and your well-being. Were you aware of that? So maybe if it's going to actually help your health, would it interest you? Maybe you would like to try it. It's taken over my life. That's what my husband said to me. Oh, it takes over your life. Really? 2 or 3 hours a week, that's taken over my life. It's helping my health. It's keeping me healthy. It's keeping me, I'm actually 65. I'm only kidding. But it does help you to stay younger. It clears your mind. It stops you from stressing. A lot of people have said to me, Jan, you're not able to get to your business. You're not able to do any massages. Why are you not stressed out your box? Because it's out with my control. There's nothing I can do to change it. And the yoga has taught me that, not to stress about things that are out with my control. Focusing on my breath and things like that helps me to switch those wee niggly things that go on in my mind that I know I can't do anything about, and focus on the things that I can do things about, like coming on to speak to you guys. So that does help as well. It takes too long. You're there for an hour and a half. 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just to work on your breath. That's not a long time out your day. It takes you longer to drink a cup of tea. You can take time to take a cup of tea or eat a packet of crisps and drink a can of juice. You can take a few minutes out your day to do a little bit of yoga. And the other thing that I asked my husband about, oh, come on, why won't you do yoga? He has a wind problem. He's frightened that he may break wind while he's doing his yoga practice. But when you're practicing yoga, all you're thinking about is yourself, and you're really not interested in what the person's doing next to you. You're only interested about yourself. And that is one of the things that I think maybe is that wee bit more difficult to kind of get your head round. But I have to admit that I'm not aware when I'm teaching a class of how many people are letting wind out and how many aren't, and if they do in the first place. But I thought that was quite funny. So that was the things that I found works for yoga. So what does yoga help? It helps anxiety, it helps to de-stress you, it helps with depression, it helps your mental clarity. So if you've got a problem that you're not sure about, if you do 5 minutes of breathing, it might then give you that clarity in your mind, and it will help to problem solve. It will help to take away this continuity of anxiety because you're switching your brain off, and the more often that you do it, then you might find that these things that you're being anxious about, as I said, they're out of your control. Is it really worth worrying about? And then you can focus on things that really do matter and you really can help. So what I decided to do today was to do a little breathing exercise with everybody, and that's what we're going to do for me just to finish off this chat. So I think Damon said that he was able to switch off people's cameras if they wanted to do that.
I think they have to switch their video off themselves. So if you go to stop video, just while we're doing it, it's probably easier.
Right. Okay, Damon. So this is just a simple breathing technique that I want you just to connect with. So you don't actually need to look at me. I'm not going to stand up and touch my toes and things like that. It's all to do with the breath, and it's all to do with everybody's nose, and we all have one, okay? And we're probably unaware of just how we connect with the breath. So if you want to switch off your camera, that's fine. I think everybody's done that. Just everybody's fine. Okay. And I want you just to close your eyes. You don't need to close your eyes, but I want you just to close your eyes. I just want you just to focus on your nose. And I want you just to focus on how the breath comes in and out of your nose. So you don't need to change anything at all. I just want you just to connect with the breath and just become aware of how that breath comes in and comes out of your nose. And as you're becoming connected with the breath coming in and out of your nose, I want you just to start to focus on each of the nostrils. And I want you to become aware of what nostril is working better for you. Is it your left nostril? Or is it your right nostril? So just focus on that breath coming in and out of your nostrils, and decide just for yourself which nostril is working better for you. And now that you've focused on which nostril is working better for you, I'm just going to do a very short breathing exercise. So the nostril that's working best for you, I want you just to inhale more fully through that nostril. And then hold the breath just for a second, and then let the breath come out through the nostril that's not working as well. Have a slight pause, and then breathe in again through the nostril that's not working as well. Hold it, and then exhale through your good nostril. Breathe in through your good nostril, hold it, and then exhale through the not so good nostril. Pause. Inhale through the not so good nostril, pause, and then exhale through the good nostril. Pause, inhale through the good nostril, pause, exhale through the bad nostril. I'm just going to leave you just for a few seconds, just working on that gentle breathing exercise as you work with your breath coming in through your good nostril out through the bad, in through the bad, and out through the good. Now I'd like you just to complete that cycle of breathing through the nostrils. And then just breathe in as normal through both nostrils. And what you should probably find is that nostril that wasn't working quite so well is probably working almost as well as your good nostril. And now that you're focused on your breath for a full minute and a half, I'd like everybody just to switch their cameras back on and just come back to the room. And what you've managed to do in that minute and a half is you've managed to switch your mind off from absolutely everything else and all this crazy madness about COVID-19 and the fact that we're all sitting in our own rooms on Zoom, and you've just taken a minute and a half to yourself, so well done. And that's me finished my wee talk for this afternoon. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much, Jan. That was really good. A really good example at the end there as well. Just the simple things that you can do if you have someone who has good knowledge in that area. So no, that's really good. And again, we'll come on to any questions at the end. But again, I sound like a complete maniac. I'm all over the place because my wife's been doing yoga for 20 years, and I've tried it with her, and I've never been particularly against it, although I think there is that wee thing of, as a man, it's always more challenging. But I'm so tight, but it's never stopped me, because even though I always find I can move, at least a couple of inches more than I could previous time. So I'm still really tight, but it's just those, I think Mark mentioned them, the tiny steps that, and then the improvements these make. So I'm still doing that, and I've had the pleasure of taking part in a couple of Jan's sessions. So quick before I forget, we put a note about the Together for Business Hub on the Chamber website, and we've got a whole wellbeing section which these guys have are helping us to develop, and we're putting some online sessions on there, and we're just talking to Jan about a Together for Business session. So I'll maybe do a quick poll and see who might be interested in sort of that as part of this group, because I think that'd be a great way to introduce people to it, or develop people who are already doing it. So thank you very much. And again, sort of the stress and the sort of getting away from things leads us really nicely on to Michael, I think, because there's a lot of stress and anxiety around at the moment.
Absolutely. And first of all, thanks very much for all turning your video back on to listen to the next part. I appreciate that. Yeah, as Damon has said, my name's Michael Byrne, and I'm the founder of an organisation called LETS, and that's an acronym for Lived Experience Trauma Support. And we specialise in mental health training and support for businesses looking to improve the culture of mental health within the workplace. And we draw upon our own experience of mental health and traumatic events. And I suppose I'll tell you a wee bit about myself, first of all, just to put that into context, to give me some credence to be able to talk about mental health and traumatic events and so on. I've been through quite a lot of traumatic events, like everyone else. There's nothing special about it, but coming from a man's perspective, where generally the stereotype is that we don't talk about our mental health, and we're trying to bridge that gap. I've had a lifetime of many traumatic events, and in my 20s, my father was brutally murdered. And he was murdered on a Thursday evening, and I returned to work on the Friday morning. Forward another few years, and in 2013, I was in the Clutha Bar when the helicopter landed on top of us. And as you may recall, that was a Friday night, and I went to work on the Monday morning. A massive professional mistake, I have to say, but that was a lived and learned experience that was brought into me from a very early age when I suffered child abuse from my parents. So I created a way of coping with my mental health and mental ill health and trauma and stress and so on that was absolutely detrimental to myself. That culminated in me having a mental health breakdown in 2017 that lasted for 13 months. Out with the birth of my son, it's probably the worst and best thing that's ever happened to me, because a lot of fears that I had over my life with regards to mental health, about judgment, and never been able to speak about it, were absolutely blown away by the time I came out of recovery. And that allowed me then to set up this business that I now have, and I'm delighted to be in the position that I am just now. So that's kind of some context about me, and some other interesting statistics at this point in time is that 1 in 4 people at any given time will struggle with their mental health. Now, there's over 20 participants here just now, so potentially there's at least 4 of us, or 5 of us, arithmetic not that great there, who could be struggling with their mental health at this point in time. I won't ask for anyone to say where they are or where they aren't, but that's statistically what it is. The difficulty will be is that people generally don't want to say, I'm struggling with my mental health. And sometimes you don't want to struggle with your mental health, particularly if you work for an employer, because you believe that it could be career suicide for you. Statistics show, certainly in the Glasgow area, that 70% of employees do not want to tell their employer that they're struggling with their mental health. Now, I'd assume that statistic was taken, pre-COVID. That may well be more now, but it's 70%. And overall, within the UK, 300,000 people a year lose their job to mental health related illnesses, whether that's of their own initiative or whether they believe that their career's been ended by their employer. A recent stat also showed that 1 in 3 calls to the Samaritans at this point in time are COVID-19 related. So that kind of shows the panic that's out there with regards to this pandemic. So without further ado, I've kind of split this into 2 parts. I'm assuming that people in the audience today are business owners or work for a business. I'll speak a wee bit about mental health from a business perspective, and I'll also end with a little bit about it from an individual perspective. And hopefully that catches everyone within the audience. So currently the mental health stressors for most of us at this point in time would be mortality, income, job security, fear, and general insecurity. Now, most people would encounter those over a career that may last 10, 15, 20 years, but we've been asked to condense all of these concerns and fears into this past 6-week period. And that's very difficult. What's happening is that for the very first time, a lot of people are beginning to struggle with their mental health. Never expressed or experienced any mental health concerns before, but people who have initially now got coping mechanisms. So I've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I know what my coping mechanisms are, and I've adapted fairly well to this, but that's because I already have pre-existing coping mechanisms. But there are pressures that you would have just now that you would have spread out over a career. So from a business point of view, what's the value of you looking after your staff for their mental health and well-being at this point in time? I've already said what the statistics are, 1 in 4 suffer and so on. Statistics show that for every, the current year, 43 to 97 billion pounds was lost in mental ill health to UK businesses. So that's 43 to 97 billion pounds are lost. However, to counterbalance that, statistics also show that for every £1 that you as a business owner spend on the well-being of your staff, your return will be between £1.50 and £9. So in purely statistical and financial terms, that's 150 to 900% the return on your investment just by investing on the well-being of your staff. So I suppose it begs the question, why would you not do it? So I'm going to speak about some intervention and some strategies and tools that perhaps you could put into place just now. Most organisations will have a won't have a mental health sickness and absence policy. They will generally have a sickness and absence policy. And within that, we'll capture people who phone up and say, I've got a sore stomach or I'm not well. But it's hiding mental illness because people don't want to phone up their boss perhaps and say, I'm struggling with my mental health. So therefore, what you really have is hidden mental illness within your workplace. So how is you as an employer, how can you deal with that? What I would suggest that you do is you start to develop a mental health strategy. Now, I get that may be difficult at this point in time. But at the very least, I would suggest that you start to look at what interventions you can have and put into place. What point of contacts do you currently have at this point in time for staff members who may be struggling with their mental health? Do you have mental health first aiders? And if you do, are those first aiders managers within your workplace? they may not necessarily be the best people for employees to go and approach. If it's your line manager and you have to openly admit that you may be struggling with your mental health, it could be seen as detrimental. It may not be the person you really want to disclose that you're struggling with your mental health is. If you have mental health first aiders, how effective are they? Are they being used? Are staff coming and presenting to them? And if they aren't, why not? Do they know about the first aiders, or is there a stigma still attached to it? But first of all, I would maybe ask yourself, what would you do if you were struggling with your mental health within the workplace? Would you go to the mental health first aider? Do you have other things in place that say if someone in your employment is struggling with their mental health, here's a phone number and you'll get 6 weeks counselling? Let me just ask, would you do that? Would you want to enrol in something like that where you're phoning a complete stranger who may not have any lived experience of some of the things that you're trying to cope with? I know that was certainly a barrier for me. I didn't want to go and speak to a counsellor. My perception was that it would be a young boy. I'm 50 years old. It would be a young boy or a young girl without lived experience. And how were they going to tell me how to cope with a helicopter disaster or a murder of my father? They wouldn't have that lived experience. So that was a barrier to me. So what barriers are currently in place for your organisation to allow people, first of all, to say, I've got a problem or I'd like help? One of the things I would suggest that you do is actually to ask your staff, how would you like me as an employer to know that you're struggling with your mental health, and what would you like me to do? I often get asked, what can we do? What's the sort of questions we should be asking people, or should we do this and should we do that? Don't put the cart before the horse. It's a bit like Mark says, you need the foundations first of all. The foundations of any successful strategy would be engaged with your staff. Ask them at early situation, how would you like me as an employer to know that you need help and assistance? And it might not be that simply saying, I've got an open door approach, come in and speak to me anytime. Believe me, that's a dissuader, that's not a persuader, in my experience. So I would suggest that you do that. Some strategies, as I've said, you may want to look at your employee assistance programs and develop a strategy at this point in time. If you don't have an employee assistance scheme and you would like some assistance to develop one, or you would like my organisation to be part of it, let me know, but I can equally advise you of some good things as well. But actually, start asking your staff, asking them how you can help them. As I've said before, you need to be mindful that for staff to present themselves as struggling with their mental health, that they don't see it as career suicide. You have to show that you care. And that's one of the main tools for me as a driver for a successful strategy within a business organisation, is to let your staff that you know that you actually care about them. They're not just an employee. They're not just productive for you and so on, and that, they do this piece of work and, that they're a member of staff, and if they don't participate, well, you can get someone else. Believe me, that doesn't work. If you show a staff member that you care and you genuinely care about them, productivity, as we all know, will be far better. But it actually matters, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. One of the questions I got asked a long time ago was, can you tell me where to send? We've got this employee and they're struggling with their mental health, they've been suicidal, can you tell me where to send them? And there are plenty of organisations where you can send them, but that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is sit down and have a conversation. And sometimes I get said, what's the policies and procedures if I've got a member of staff who's struggling with their mental health? And I kind of always say, look, see if your friend or your family member came and said to you, I'm struggling with my mental health, you wouldn't look for your policies and procedures. The first thing you would do would be to say, look, sit down, let's have a chat, and how can I help you? What can I do to help you? And it's as simple as that. If you show that you care and you're empathetic towards your staff, staff will start to engage with you. As I said, I would develop a mental health strategy and take it from there. Care about your staff, but most importantly, one of the things I always say to employers is see beyond the suit. That's because for 30 odd years in my career, I always wore a suit, a shirt and a tie. And I bluffed it for 30 odd years to my employers that I wasn't struggling with my mental health. I would turn up for work, I'd have a big smile, shave, I'd look the part, and people believed that I wasn't struggling. I went to work the morning after my father was murdered and the next working day after the Clutha to fool people into believing that I was okay. It was a suit of armour and it was a learned behaviour. So when your staff, if you ask them the question, say, no, I'm okay, I'm all right, ask them again. see beyond the smile, see beyond what they want to see, because we all put a face on. Whatever it is we're trying to do, we're trying to persuade people, we all put a facade up. But as an employer or a business owner, see beyond that, see beyond the suit and the smile, and ask again. Don't take "I'm okay" for an answer. Make sure that you've got other different avenues to help people as well. Don't just say, well, I've got this counsellor, I've got this, I've got that. That might not be what actually is beneficial for the member of staff. Make sure that your different approach is suitable. We don't all want to drive the same car. We don't all want to eat the same food. It's the exact same with struggling with your mental health. We don't all want to go and see a counsellor. We don't all want to do the same thing. For me, it's about talking to someone who had a lived experience. I've got a lived experience, so that works really well. And to be honest, my business model is simply based on the fact that, see, when you're struggling with something, you generally want to talk to someone who's been through something similar. It's the exact same with your mental health. So some best practice guidelines: keep in contact with your staff. I've heard some really good organisations sending out newsletters. We're doing podcasts just now, and they've been really successful. With Jenny here, who's on the screen, they've been really successful, and we've got a lot of businesses who are sending them out in their weekly newsletters or putting them on their intranet, things like that. Start to look at how you can engage your staff and actually start having a conversation about mental health. One of the big benefits of all of this just now will be the reduction in stigma around mental health. Because as I've said before, there's 23 people sitting here just now. There's a fair chance that at least 5 of us are having some struggles with our mental health. So from an individual perspective, I'll just take a couple of minutes. I'm aware of the time, and I want to leave some time for questions for fantastic Mark and Jan. From an individual perspective, if you're struggling with your mental health at this point in time, it's absolutely normal, okay? First of all, we're in the 6th week of a lockdown. Who would ever have thought that we were going to be in a situation like this? So if you are beginning to think, I'm having some concerns about my mental health, that's okay. The whole population is in danger just now of having a struggle with their mental health. So don't feel bad about it. Don't feel there's a stigma around it. Be open about it. Accept the situation. And congratulate yourself that you're actually becoming aware that you're struggling with your mental health and you're not denying it. One of the things that I would say at this point in time, the dangerous point about struggling with your mental health is that you may begin to encounter negative thoughts that may take you down the road of wanting self-harm, and certainly for me it was suicide. Quickly, I don't have time to go into all, but just bear in mind that when you're having these thoughts, they are only thoughts. You don't need to believe them, okay? You will have in any given day 60,000 thoughts, okay? But when you're struggling with your mental health, all you seem to hear is the negative thoughts. They will tell you that you'll never get through this, your business will fail, you'll not have a job, all of these things. But they're all lies. Don't believe your brain. It's not true. Your brain doesn't know, and it's definitely not your friend sometimes. And final last couple of points, as I said, I'm aware of the time. If you are struggling, reach out. Reach out for organisations like myself or the Samaritans or whatever you think is the best fit for yourself. Help is available out there, and there's absolutely no shame. I'm sitting here in front of 22 other people telling you about my mental health. There's no shame in it, and particularly for the men in the audience and for the ladies who may know men who are beginning to struggle. Absolutely get them to open up. And as I've said, most importantly for me, 47 years, I didn't talk to anyone about the struggles that I'd went through. Child abuse, my father's murder, the Clutha, multiple other things. I didn't speak about it, and it led me to a mental health breakdown. The best thing that I have ever done is talk about it. And to this day, my wife still says to me, for 47 years you never spoke about it, and now you don't shut up about it. So on that note, I'll shut up about it. But don't believe your brain, and we can all be positive. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Michael. That was really good. So thanks very much for that. A fitting end to the whole thing, and I think some real insights there for people to take away. And again, I love the way it all links as well. The idea that you can sort of manage some of those issues as well with the things that Jan and Mark have spoken about here as well. So I'll do a wee round up at the end, but I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions. You can either ideally put your wee hand up in the chat bar, or that's for anyone, by the way.
We've got one question so far in the chat bar from Shona McLean for Jan. She's asked, is there anything we could use for a 15-minute session at work?
Yes. Are you meaning to do work with the breath? Because 15 minutes is plenty time. But we can actually do like a very, very short breath work, and then do just some work for releasing tension in the neck and shoulders, just for mobility, for sitting at a desk. But
that would be brilliant.
Perfectly easy to do, and you would be very surprised at what 15 minutes could actually, how a difference it would make you feel, to be honest with you.
Actually highlight something there as well, in terms of the way that so Jan's running quite a few of her sessions online at the moment, and it works really well. So again, 15 minutes is maybe not time to get to an office and back, but you could certainly connect with an expert to run a session virtually really easily. And that's one of the things we've been talking about, is how we change the way we work after this.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
We've got another question from Anne. Can Michael recommend any online mental health first aid courses?
Yes, if I can give a plug for my own organisation, we're actually running mental health awareness training courses on Tuesday the 12th of May, and mental health first aid courses on Thursday the 14th of May. Sorry, I don't know if that's allowed, but whilst we're here, if that suits you, Anne, if you want to connect with me, we're actually just in the process of beginning to advertise it. We'll do that in the next day or so. But provisionally the dates are mental health awareness 12th of May and mental health first aid 14th of May. That's okay.
Maybe drop us a line, Michael. We could share that to the wider audience as an added value for the Together for Business campaign.
Of course, as I said, it hasn't been announced yet. We just finalised the dates yesterday. But yeah, I'll get that to you, Damon and Annie. Thanks very much.
Perfect.
We've got one for Mark. Any tips for hip exercises due to sitting at desks for long spells?
Get up more. That's probably the easiest thing. Usually the reason you get tight hips is because you're sitting in that contracted position the whole time, so your hip is in a shortened position. So getting up and stretching them is useful. The thing that most people do that I think is probably not ideal is the idea that you stretch them all the time. Usually activating them so that you're actually doing something where you pull your knee up against some form of small resistance, very small, starts to create blood flow within the area. One of the other things that I usually suggest is an easy fix is to buy a foam roller and just roll your hip just to try and get that blood flow. But it is actually one of the things that I'm going to put up on the portal. There's two things that I'm going to look at in much more detail from the beginning, because most people who do sit at a desk for a long time, the first thing that I tend to find is a problem is the rounding forward of the shoulders, internal rotation of the shoulders, tension up the back of the neck, and lack of strength in the upper back muscles. So that's the first series of videos I'm putting up. And then the second one is going to be a series of videos on exactly that, hip movement and hip mobility and hip strengthening. With the other one being the fact that everything around that hip situation has to work. So it's not just whenever you release something on one side, which the yoga stuff I think is fantastic for, and even just taking the movements, small movements from it, and not necessarily having to do the whole class every single time, just take some of the movements and make them work for you. But the other side is when you loosen off one side, you want to strengthen the other side. And for the most part, when you're sitting, it's the bit you're sitting on. Your gluteus maximus is the biggest muscle in your body, and most people just use it to sit on all the time. So strengthening that is the other key aspect to trying to do glute strengthening exercises whilst also activating and mobilizing your hip flexors. But there are hundreds of ways to do it, because where your weakness might be in that scenario is going to be different for everyone, and that's where it comes back to that thing of there's no general answer to that. There's a case of trying to figure out what problem you're having, because quite often when people sit at desks, they sit side on, and their computer's so over to the side or something like that, and that can cause a problem because you're imbalanced, or it could be just that you hunch forward and your posture's bad. There's lots of different things, but the main thing is to just move more.
Great. Thanks, Mark. That was great. I don't know, Jan, do you want to add anything? Because I know that, again, having been, it sounds like I do everything in the world. So I've actually got always had a bad back, and I sit at a desk, and the strengthening stuff, again, I'm probably sort of do a lot of the strengthening stuff, which works against the flexibility sometimes. So you have to have a mix. And actually my osteopath showed me some moves, and they were just yoga moves. You know, it was the leg over to the side, and I was like, this is just out of yoga class.
Yeah. A tip that I have for my sedentary clients, if they've got like sort of hip problems for seated, is to come off their chair, obviously not in their work because they'd look a wee bit silly, and sit with their back up against, say, like their couch, but sitting cross-leg, and that helps to release the hips, and it takes the hips in a different direction. There's 6 ways that the hips move, and unfortunately we're kind of super glued with them sitting forward. So to open up the hips by sitting cross-leg, that helps to release the glutes, but it also helps to open up the hip flexors so that when they do get up and walk about, like what Mark's explaining to do, they will feel looser. I mean, I'm really tiny, so if I'm actually sitting cross-legged just now on the couch, if it's accessible to them, they can always sit cross-legged on their work chair as well. They could try that, but I'm quite lucky that, I don't know if I can move this, I'm actually sitting I'm sitting cross-legged just now. But as I say, I just think that works for me. It's just a thought, you could sit cross-legged at your work.
I can see a whole different section opening up here for us to try and have some, because I have come across these things, you know, exercises that you can actually do in breaks at work to help yourself. Yeah. So I think it's something we should maybe focus on, and even to the extent that, again, when you speak to some of the specialists in the next stage is obviously when you do have problems, you know, or you allow yourself to get to the stage where you have problems, then, you know, osteopaths and chiropractors are always talking about the height of your screen and the, you know, what you're using sit on and stuff. So these are all interconnected. So I think the idea that we could develop something that would benefit businesses would be a positive out of this. So thanks for that. I would quite like to ask Michael a question. I don't know, obviously we've got a lot of sole traders as well. So I know you're talking about sort of communicating with teams. What 2 things, I guess. What do they do to get themselves through this period of isolation? And also, what sort of things, you know, are there any sort of tips in terms of, you know, routine and these sort of things to keep people sort of, you know, deal with some of the mental health issues that might be coming to the fore?
Definitely, Damon. Yeah, I'm aware that a lot of, you know, businesses are sole traders and so on, and with that you feel isolated and so on. But you don't need to be. What we can do if you want is we could set up a Facebook group that's specifically designed for sole traders with mental health as a spin-off of this, Damon, or connect with the Chamber of Commerce. We could do that so that, you know, we're still checking in with each other, that although we're sole traders and perhaps working from home, the last thing you want to feel is isolated and alone, and that can be detrimental to your mental health. And you're right, I think I spoke at one of the Chamber events a couple of weeks ago about how to look after good mental health within this period of isolation. And for me, it's going to sound really simplistic, but I'm sure Mark would agree, simple works really well sometimes, particularly when you're doing brand new things, and for me, whether it's exercises or mental health. I still believe that, you know, get up with a mind to get up in the morning. You know, I still get up at 7 a.m. in the morning as if it's a normal working day. I get up, get showered, and so on. You know, up, shower, shave, whatever it may be, and for the ladies in the audience here, you know, put makeup on or do whatever it is that you would normally do of your working day, and just normalise it. One of the things I've also been doing is I've been eating a lot more healthier. I know a lot of people have kind of went the other way and not been eating healthier. And over the last few weeks, I've been eating a lot healthier. I've made some vegan meals just to take away from the meat. I work out a lot, but I don't want to always get protein from meat. I'm trying to look for other sources. But it's really good for your mind, looking at new recipes and so on. I've also been creative. I used to write poetry. I've now used my time that I've got to go back to write poetry. But more importantly, some of the things that you could do is unplug from your devices. And I know that sounds ironic that we're all on a computer just now. Unplug from your devices in terms of your news and media, how you get all that from into your living room or into your world. If you generally only check your media at lunchtime and tea time, stick to that routine. And importantly, the point I just made is stay connected. Although you might be in your home, the last thing you need to be is unconnected from everyone. And probably the last couple of things that I already spoke about is reach out and just accept the situation. Because we are in this situation, it won't be like this for long, but because we're so tired, you know, potentially businesses are in jeopardy and so on. But use that time to plan for the future. Don't just see the negatives, see the positives.
Great. Okay, thanks, Michael. That's really good points there, and it's certainly something that's coming out of the conversations that we're having, and you know, please, everyone's welcome to our daily drop-in sessions. We're looking at refreshing them a bit next week, maybe changing the time, but at the moment, this week at least, they're at 11 o'clock, and that is, we've had a whole tend to get between sort of about 7 and 6 to 10 people, but it's quite often different people and different connections. So we'll be trying to continue that because it's always been a key part of the Chamber's role anyway. You know, sole traders love the networking events because it is that opportunity to, you know, connect with the outside world sometimes, because you can be stuck at your desk without, you know, seeing someone in person at all. That's, I think, the bit I've been encouraging people to use the Zoom as much as possible when they're, you know, instead of making phone calls, because we're not seeing people. So actually, you know, bung on a Zoom link or a WhatsApp video or something, and you're actually at least connecting with that face, and there's a big difference there. So no, that's great. So and have we got any more questions that you, Philip, or has anyone got a hand up? You can put a physical hand up if you can't find your no, I think we're pretty much coming to the end of things here then. So well, thank you all for coming. And
sorry to interrupt you. I think Mark's got a question.
All right, okay.
It's not so much a question, it was more just to build on something that Michael said. I just wanted to mention the fact that, as well as the Samaritans, there's a line for a company called Breathing Space, which is in Scotland. I actually find they're very good for business-related, similar kind of talks, so that they're actually a good company to talk to, but it's Scotland only, and they're only late at night, I think, so they are very good. And the other thing, just to build on something else that Michael had said, was a phrase that I'd heard that I like giving to people, which is the idea that, yeah, you're not your thoughts, you are the thinker of your thoughts. And the whole thing that Janice mentioned was with the breathing exercise, you can change what you're thinking about immediately, like that. So if you are feeling really kind of stressed or what have you, you can change. You know, if you give you something major to have to think about, you suddenly stop. You know, if you were driving your car and you're kind of in your own head, and suddenly a car pulls out in front of you, you're no longer thinking about that thing. You think about, oh my, what am I going to do here? You can do it. It's just that when you're in that funk all the time, it's quite hard to get out of that. So it was just something else I just wanted to add on to the back of what Michael was saying.
Thank you. No, that's fantastic. And actually, it leads me on nicely to rounding up, as you know, someone who's hugely you know, supportive of bringing this to the benefits of all this health and well-being opportunities to businesses, because you've made me think about the sort of benefits that these all of these areas have. You know, the sort of exercise and yoga. One of the things I constantly have to think about is I've just forgotten about everything. You know, I've not thought about any of the stresses at the offices, because I've probably been looking at where my next breath is coming from when I'm doing a workout, or in yoga you kind of lose yourself in it, so you come out and it's a weird sensation where you come out sort of relaxed and energized at the same time, which is an amazing feeling. So I always say, in terms of if someone came to you with a bit of software and said, right, well, this software is going to increase your productivity, increase energy levels, cut down on your sickness and sick days, increase immunity, motivation of the staff, and it will deal with stress and mental health. You just ask how much, basically. So I think my final sort of thing to say really about the content is have a think about that, and think about the the absolutely huge benefits to business of having a healthy workforce. And I think the more businesses and more individuals can take ownership of that, the better. And it is, everyone benefits from it. I've had a few clients who've started running regular yoga sessions, and it's great because people are told, well, you can have an hour off. We pay you for the hour. You can have an hour off to do yoga, or you can just carry on with your work. Of course, like even just having the hour off is they'll go and do the yoga, but then they get forced into that sort of benefit side of things. So yeah, I'd just like to thank all the speakers today. It's been 3 really insightful presentations. So yes, if you could pop your clapping hands up if you know how to do that on the reactions, that'd be great. Thank you very much. And then finally, just to give a wee plug for I guess we're speaking to Jan about doing more with her, maybe some virtual events through the Together for Business that we've been speaking about. So I'll send you some details of those, because it'd be great to get this group as the start of something like that. I think sometimes it's easier when you start from afresh with a new group, because I guess that's probably one of the barriers that people find, is it can be, feel a little bit like an outsider when you come into those. So maybe that's a way into that. And then we'll be developing the hub more with these guys as well. We've already got some good starting content, and if you can keep engaged with that, we'll be adding to that as we go along. All 3 guys are contributing to that with the podcasts are up there. Mark's introductory videos up there, and we've got Janice's lesson plans, and we'll be adding to that. So again, thank you very much for that. One final plug. I don't know if I'll pass over to Philip in case I miss it, but please do try and use the, if you've seen a benefit, use the Together for Business hashtag and follow the hashtag on LinkedIn. We've got Twitter, if you have that, and also follow the Facebook page. And if you can tag us as much as possible, we're trying to sort of generate a bit of momentum for the campaign and getting more businesses to benefit. Is there anything I've missed there, Philip?
Just I've put the links to the Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn page on the chat bar. But before everyone disappears, can we just do a quick photo? Just do a quick screen grab for everyone. We usually have everyone putting a thumbs up or doing something, just looking happy.
Right.
Happy guys.
Perfect. Right. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again. Cheers. I can unmute all.